What's going on, everybody? Welcome back. This is Jeremy Sanders from Crew Fresh Culture, and this is going to be another episode of the Underground Leadership Movement. And as with the last couple episodes, I'm excited to bring along some friends in a really good area that I think that a lot of people out there need to hear, especially myself, as we'll get into here in a little bit. But with me today are a couple battalion chief level buddies of mine. I've got Jacob Johnson and I've got Corley Moore. How you guys doing?
Good, buddy. How are you?
Doing good, man. Doing good. Thank you,
That's
Jeremy.
good. Now I'm excited to get into this stuff, and then we'll get into why we're here in a second. But been talking about kind of getting together for a while, and holidays and everything else has been really busy, but glad that we got a chance to sit down and really reconnect. I've missed kind of talking with you guys just selfishly. So I'm looking forward to just reconnect a little bit myself. But thank you for coming and for what we're going to be talking about today, and why I asked these two guys to come on with me is really kind of revitalizing down careers, or picking either yourself or others in your crew or whoever kind of up in the low times. And anybody that's been in the fire service for any amount of time, you quickly find that it's a roller coaster ride. I don't know that there are many people that can say that they honestly spent day one of their rookie year to day last of their retirement year fired up, and every day in between. I can't imagine that being the case. If it is, that's awesome, but I can't imagine it. I definitely have not lived that story myself. I've had a lot of ups, had a lot of downs, and so why I brought these two guys on is because they are other people that are honest about that journey too. That's another issue that maybe we can get into as well, but we all face these things, like I just said, but there's not many people that talk about it. There's not many people that want to admit that, hey, this is something I went through, or this is something I'm going through. And so hopefully we can kind of dig into some of these things and maybe open some eyes, maybe give somebody some strength to either start stepping up their game or start just being honest and sharing their story so others can. So without anything further, you guys have, definitely Jacob, I've heard you share your story quite a bit. And so, you've got a good story of kind of falling to less of a leader than you really even knew you were, and really kind of coming back from that. And so from this point, man, I just want to kind of dig in. I have no agenda, no script, but I definitely want to learn from you guys, since Jacob has really shared his a lot more. I think maybe Corley, if you don't mind kind of starting with a little bit of your story, and just from my memory of just kind of what we've talked about, you've kind of basically said that there's been times in your career earlier that nobody, including yourself, would have probably ever guessed that you would be sitting in a battalion chief role right now, and
No
kind of
doubt about
the person the firefighter you were. But if whatever you're comfortable with, go ahead and share with us, please.
Absolutely. And that's putting it mildly. Like, I think that's, but no, bottom line is, when I got hired, I was 19, 20 years old, right there around my birthday. And I was a kid. I was your typical 20-year-old, that thought he knew everything, and, a little bit cocky. And I did not understand. I just didn't have the maturity to understand how great of a job I had hit the lottery when I got it. So all that being said, I did not take it serious. And that's not to say I was just a turd or a mutt even, but I just did not appreciate the job, did not value the job, did not treat it with the respect that it deserved for years. And I showed up, did my job, loved to have fun. That was probably the main driving force, was having fun at the fire station, as long as those pesky calls didn't get in the way, and I loved going to fires. That was fun. But I never took it serious. And honestly, I didn't take myself serious. And that was part of the issue. And now I've always been, I don't want to sound conceited, but I've always been intelligent and a reader. So our promotional process is based off how well you can memorize. So I knew I would probably eventually promote. And so that is really kind of the turning point of my career. Around, I think it was around the 12-year mark when I made driver. And all of a sudden I was going to be riding out when the officer took off and making those decisions. And that was kind of the turning point in my career to where I said, holy crap, I have not taken this job serious enough. And so I don't know which part you want to dig into on it. There's a lot to unpack there. I was a young father with newborn kids when I hired on at age 20. So all of that going on also. And I guess the best way I can say it is that I grew up and became a man in the fire service. You know, I went from being a kid to being a man, and I cannot even begin to name all of the people that influenced me and helped me do that, and luckily not screw it up or lose the job or anything like that along the way.
Yeah.
So that's kind of it in a nutshell.
Yeah.
So,
and I think you brought up kind of growing up and becoming a man. I think there's two things that are involved in this whole situation, and then both maturity. You know, you just overall maturity. You're coming in as a kid. You don't know better because you're 20 years old. I mean, that's just how it's going to be. But also the all important and sometimes kind of hard to kind of put your hands around, the emotional maturity that you kind of gain over time. And I think both of those are key pieces to making this all work really well, and to surviving, to surviving the downtimes and getting out of them as quickly as you can, and all that. So yeah, that's a kind of exactly what I was wanting to kind of get into. Just a little bit of a refresher of kind of why you're here and why I asked you. So that's great. I appreciate it. And we'll dig into some more of those here in a second. So Jacob, you've talked about when you were, I believe it was a captain, and you kind of had your aha lieutenant. You had your aha moment of basically, you had this new firefighter that you couldn't help, and you basically lost his job because you weren't doing your job. And so that was a turning point with that. Do you have any other moments kind of previous to that speak more of a kind of like Corley's story of just kind of being young and not knowing better, and kind of having, maybe, I know you've talked, is it Pops? You talk a lot about some good influences, maybe, people like that have brought you out of.
Yeah, sure. I mean, Corley said it great, right? Like kind of became a man through the fire service. I mean, I think that happens with all of us. I don't think it has to happen to an 18 or 19-year-old. I think, there's a lot of young men out there and women out there that are lost, and they get in the fire service at 25, 26 or 30, and they kind of grow up through the fire service, and it's because of mentors. And, I I had a lot of failures, previous to my lieutenant story. It's just what I didn't realize is that they were building me up for the ultimate failure, but also preparing me on how to handle it and change. Right. And so, like, I go back to one story. I graduated fire school, and I was in the top 3% of my class. And, I thought I was very intelligent. I thought I was very smart, and I thought that made me a good fireman. And so one night, right, typical volunteer fire department, which not a bash against them, right, because I was a proud volunteer, but it was raining, it was cold. So instead of training, we did Fireman Jeopardy, right, on our weekly training night. And I won Jeopardy because I had good base knowledge of the book, because I just graduated fire school, right? And I turned around to Gary Tilton, he was a firefighter at the time, ended up being our first full-time paid fire chief, but his badge number was 28, right? And Katie. And so the way that Katie does badge numbers is, each new person that comes through just goes up one number, right? So I was 412 and he was 28, right? So, he'd been around for a while. The fire department started in 1946, and I think he got in it in like 1958. And so whenever I won Jeopardy, I looked at him and said, "Hey, I won Jeopardy. I'm a better fireman than you. And you want to talk about a butt chewing," right? And he was about this tall, and he was looking up at me, and he said, "You sit down and you shut the F up." He said, "I wrote that book that you read, my blood, sweat, and tears, and with the guys that taught me the job, because there was no books when I started. And so everything that you think you know is because of me and because of every other person here and every other person that came before you. So if you think you're so bad, then strap on your boots and let's get on the truck." And that just kind of hit me like a ton of bricks, right? Because I had never really truly been put in my place yet, as a rookie fireman. I mean, there was moments, Pops had his moment about, my first fire, you suck type stuff, but to really get like that, just slap in the face, right? Like a dad moment almost. It was a big time, like, whoa, I got to take a step back and I got to realize that, okay, I have good base knowledge, but I only got 2 years in the volunteer fire department right now. Like I don't have anything to offer.
Yeah.
And it's just little moments like that through your career that make you grow up, and they teach you to be a man through the fire service. And when you start stacking those failures up, then you start building lessons from them so you can grow in the future when the big failure happens, in my opinion. Michael Jordan said it best, right? Like for every shot I've made, I've missed 10. And and that's how we have to look at it, I think.
Super strong.
Yeah. And that, another key piece of what you said is humility. If you're young and you don't have a lot of humility, it's really, I would say it's very important for people to teach you that really quickly. And I think would you consider yourself lucky that you had somebody kind of do that real quick, and so that you kind of gained a little bit of that so that you didn't bring it further into your career?
Absolutely. 100%. I mean, when you think about it, if I don't have that moment, right, I leave that training or that class or whatever you want to call it, I leave there more arrogant than when I entered.
Yeah.
And the more arrogant and the more arrogant and the more arrogant is going to lead to something that's bigger than the failure I had. It could lead to death. It could lead to losing your job. It could lead to losing all of your mentors. It could be losing your position or your title. It could lead to a lot of bad things in life. And that's where I was starting to get when I had my big failures. I was just a very arrogant, cocky officer.
Yeah.
And when I failed, it was those moments building up all the way back to that night in the training room on 1417 Avenue D that said, okay, this is where I was. This is my slap in the face. This is my Gary Tilton, and I've got to fix this right now. And then without that, right, then I'm telling you, I probably wouldn't have a job, because I just would have kept going on, because it was never my fault, right? It was Jacob was good. Jacob loved the job, so Jacob wasn't wrong. And you just cannot do that. You have to understand this job has been around a lot longer than you. It'll be around a lot longer after you. And this job will cripple you faster than any human being on this planet. So you have to respect that.
Yeah. And I think that all kind of leads into one of the main probably topics, or one of the main pillars that we want to address with this conversation is, that accountability and how important it is for, older firefighters or more senior firefighters, whatever you want to call it, to be honest with people and call it out if it needs to be called out. And I just got done reading a book, I believe it's the 5 dysfunctions of a team. And that's one of them, the lack of accountability, lack of being able to be honest with each other. It basically says in that book that you need to have conflict. You've got to be able to have productive conversations that aren't, flowers and roses conversations, because if you don't have that, nobody grows and nobody learns and nobody gains humility. And, Jacob becomes a jerk that, doesn't last long in the fire service and is gone. And that's hard for a lot of people to do. I've got a personality that's hard for me to do, but luckily I've kind of seen the importance of that and really working on, doing that a little bit better. You kind of agree with that more, Corley?
Oh man, accountability specifically, and we're talking on a crew first culture. So I'll say a culture of accountability has to exist, because without it, Chief Thompson talks about, if not this, then what? If you don't have a culture of accountability, then what do you have? And it's a department where no one is allowed to call anybody out, from the, and when you get that, then you start getting everybody, I'll go biblical and say everybody gets to do what's right in their own eyes, and whether that's who can spend the most time in the recliner on a duty day versus who can do the least amount of training, that becomes what becomes valued when you're lacking that accountability. And it's insidious in the way that that's complacency, the way it creeps in, and accountability is one of those major mainstays in keeping complacency from creeping in. You have to have it, and you have to do it deliberately, because like I said, if not this, then what?
Yeah. And I think it's listening to a little bit of both your stories right now, obviously they're very, very summed up versions of long careers, and there's a lot more meat in there in between. But I don't know that I have just a one very glaring aha moment for me that kind of snapped me out of stuff, because I've had several ups and downs and all
Sure.
that, as probably as like you do too. But for me, kind of echoing both of your stories, and maybe this is another key ingredient, is I was an officer for probably a year and a half, or a captain, station officer, and thought that we were doing great. We had fun, we had a good crew that got along, we didn't really have any issues, but that was about it. We didn't really try to do anything extra. We were just there. When we were called upon, we went and solved what problems we could, how we could, and that was it. No training, nothing in addition. And I didn't really know anything better until, like you said, Corley, I've got a new firefighter assigned to my crew. And as soon as I heard that, even before he was there, I felt a huge weight put on me that was not there previous. And it was that weight of responsibility that I was now going to have over this person's career. I could leave things status quo like they were, and he could come on and have a great time, and we would enjoy the time that we were all together, but he would not have gotten any better at anything, and probably worse, because he was solid coming out of rookie school, and now he's just going to get stagnant.
Right.
Or I could really do my best to set him up for a great productive career, and give him as much as I possibly can while I had him. And so that was a tremendous kind of an eye-opening thing for me. And I'm very thankful for that moment, because that moment literally put in place everything else that I've done over the past couple of years, the social media and the podcast, the now speaking, things like that. None of this would have happened without that, because like you both have mentioned, I thought things were good. I thought I was a pretty decent boss, and maybe I was, but only in the areas of, I created an environment we enjoyed. There were no other areas of me being an officer that I was very good at. And so that was a great moment for me. And so how do we kind of impress on other people if we're talking about, somebody that maybe isn't a formal leader? Maybe they're either a driver or a firefighter, have no formal leadership responsibilities. How do we impress upon them the weight of that responsibility if they don't formally have that? I mean, do you guys have any tips on kind of how we can maybe pull somebody out, inspire somebody that doesn't have that capability?
Real quick, I want to say this because he says it. I want to say it before he does, which is every kid is owed the opportunity to have a love affair with his job. It's one of the most eloquent ways of putting it, man. So go ahead, Jacob.
Yeah, I mean, so when you talk about that, right, like formal leadership, right, like I think everybody struggles with that, right? Because we tell them as company officers, like, look, if the driver says something to you, it's probably because he heard it from me or she heard it from me. So I need you to just go ahead and do that, right? But I think it goes deeper than that. And I think you hit on a good point, Jeremy, is have fun, right? Like I provided a fun environment, so I thought everything was good. Having fun is a very important part of this job. We have to have fun, right? But it has to be organized fun. And so when you talk about that formal leadership, assign them projects, assign them duties, even if they're some of your daily tasks, assign them, right? Like whatever happened to morning lineup, like that's what I want to know, because I don't see it happening very often. Like whatever happened to roll call, right? Like you sit down at breakfast table, hey guys, hey girls, boom, 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 this is what we're doing today, right? That lines the day out. And I don't care what fireman you talk to, all they want is a little bit of structure, and then they can have fun within that structure.
Yeah.
And so assign them tasks. Okay, today we have 2 pre-plans. Firefighter Bob, you're in charge of pre-plans today. You're going to lead them. You're going to draw the sketch. You're going to submit all the information up the chain of command. I'll verify everything with you, and we're going to teach you this process. Firefighter Kelly, you're in charge of air pack entries today. You're going to make sure that everybody enters their air pack, that it's all correct, that if they filled their bottle, they filled out their SCBA field logs, boom, boom, boom. Driver operator so-and-so, you're going to be in charge of our training today. And I don't mean in charge of teaching it, but you're going to be in charge of documenting and putting it in the right place, right? Give them tasks, which allows them to grow and allows them to have a little bit of leadership and a little bit of ownership, and then hold them accountable to that. Boom. And that's where, like Corley was talking about, the accountability part, the culture of accountability. It's perfect, because at that moment, when you assign them that task, and before you go to bed at night, you check everything, it's not done, go knock on the door. Hey, I gave you a task today. You didn't do it. You're good at it. I know you completed it. Why didn't you finish it 100%? Come finish it.
Nice.
And then you come finish it. And that allows them to see what it takes to be a leader, but gives them small, intricate tasks that they can focus on to grow themselves, right? But still gives them the structure and the fun that they need to enjoy their job. And I mean, for me, that's what I did as a company officer. I had one firefighter that was in charge of air packs every day for 4 months. And I had a driver that was in charge of all the run records. And I say run records, he was in charge of sitting with me and filling them out and doing the narratives, because he was a step up lieutenant. So I wanted to make sure that he had everything down packed. And then I had another firefighter that was in charge. He was a senior man. He was in charge of training the rookies. Here's their book. You train them. When I go and verify their skills, if they can't do it, I'm coming to you. And I'm going to ask why. And so these are all firefighter ranks and driver ranks, and you're giving them little tad bits of responsibility. You're giving them little tad bits of leadership time, which then formulates a leader in the end, or at least it's supposed to.
Yeah.
And that's what I think is important, is lining out the day, having that structure, giving them little tiny tasks like that to accomplish, and holding them accountable. And then you're going to start building leaders within your organization.
Yeah, that's great. And I think something that you basically said, but in less than the exact terms, is you're keeping them engaged. And how much harder is it to become checked out if people are keeping you engaged? I mean, it's a lot harder to do. It's a lot easier for you to just kind of drift off into complacency if nobody's really engaging you in anything. And so, yeah, I think that's a great way to hopefully avoid a lot of this whole thing before it even starts.
Sure.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
There's a lot in Jacob's answer to unpack too,
Oh,
because
yeah.
he put so much in there that I think it just comes natural to him. You know what I'm saying? That he just
Yeah.
that I mean that sincerely. You don't even realize that, because he's talking about structure. Basically, he outlined a perfect plan of empowerment, and then not just empowerment, but it's not just delegation saying here's a task. It's he empowers them and then lets them excel. And when they don't, or if they choose not to, the accountability is there. It's just, there was a ton in that answer that is beautiful. And I think one of the things that the fire service gets horribly wrong, generally speaking, is the fact that we just rely on individual initiative so much, because there isn't that structure that exists to say, here's the structure, here's the expectation, really is what I'm talking about. Now go out and impress me, and instead we have just this, again, just we leave it up to the individual who may want to push and excel in their individual initiative, and without the structure to succeed in, they're the ones who get the most frustrated over time when we see it on repeat, and then they burn out, and it's part of the problem. And I think it starts with what Jacob was saying, that structure. Anyway, sorry, there's so much to unpack in that answer. Is beautiful.
It's so much easier for me, if I need something done, to go to the person that is always willing to do stuff, instead of going to the person that is not comfortable doing that particular thing. And then I got to basically kind of, inspire him to do more, or kind of push him out of the comfort zone, or things like that. It's a lot more work. And so I think human nature is just, we tend to go to that, the least amount of effort. And so, yeah, man, I agree with you, Corley. That's an awesome, just laying it out like that, the structure of it. for me, empowerment is a huge thing too. I don't really want to make many decisions when we're at the firehouse. That's not anything I'm interested in. I want to use as many of those situations to build the other people I'm with up as I can. And again, going back to what I said earlier, is hopefully at the same time that's going to continue to keep people engaged so that we're not drifting apart and kind of falling like that. And so I know for myself, you know, when I have had the down times, that's been where I've been. You know, I've not been with crews that were really engaged in extra stuff. I've not been in crews that had officers that were really kind of challenging me or anything like that. And so that's made it easy for me to drift that way. And so, you know, I don't want to pigeonhole this into a conversation that's geared from an officer's perspective, but that's a big piece of it. You know, we definitely want to look at it from the other way too. But as formal leaders, this is one of our biggest jobs, to keep our people engaged, to keep them, you know, from being complacent, you know, a word that Corley hates, to his arch nemesis, the complacency. But that's why we're here. And so it's got to be talked about, and it's got to be, you know, talked about how we can fix it, how we can keep it from happening. So that's awesome, Jacob.
You know, and you talk about empowerment, and Corley's talking about it. Look, like if you're a company officer and your department doesn't have one, come up with an empowerment policy for your crew, right? Like in Pearland, our fire chief sent one out to all members and said it must be posted in all stations. And it's real simple. It's real short. It's like, is it right for the customer? Is it right for our department? Or is it the right thing for our department? Is it legal? Is it ethical? Is it on your level? Like, that's a big one, right? Like,
Sure.
is this on your organizational level? Like, firefighters should not be trying to handle something that's at a chief rank, right? But like, is it is it something you want to take accountability for? Is it consistent with the departmental expectations and mission and vision and all that stuff? But at the end, it asks all these questions. At the end, it says, look, if the answer is yes to all of these, then don't ask permission, just do it.
Yeah.
Right. And so
Beautiful.
to me, that's like, that's not only empowerment, but it's encouraging to do the right thing. It's encouraging to make a decision. It's encouraging to look as an officer, to look at the board every day and read that empowerment statement and say, okay, it's okay to tell this person that they're in charge of SCBAs today. It's okay to tell this person they're in charge of training. Hey, you're really good at EMS. Today, you are going to train us on something that we suck at in EMS. Today, you're going to train us on something we're good at, or we're not good at on the fire side of things, if that's forcible entry or search or whatever. And it gives you that power to say, yeah, all of this is right, and I'm okay with this. So go on and do it. Right.
Yeah.
And
awesome.
I mean, yeah, because when you think about it, like, that could go so deep, right? Like, you're a chief officer, you get a phone call that one of your members is hurt and they're off duty. Like, okay, I'm gonna go take care of these members, right? Like that that goes so far. I'm gonna go pick them up and bring them somewhere, and you don't even have to worry about it because you know that this statement and this policy is gonna back you up.
Yeah.
The alignment of the values that happens when you have that statement that says, hey, this is check mark. If you can check these off, man, then you're in line with our organizational values, man. And when you can align those, then it takes the guesswork out of whether you should do something, man. It's
100%.
so strong, man. So yeah.
Do you have any kind of tools like that, Corley, that you have either implemented or that are already there to kind of assist in that same manner to keep people engaged or to empower or things like that?
Man, I'm heavy into relationships, and I know that's a strength and a weakness because it's tied to me investing the time. But I am heavy into relationships. One thing that was awesome. We're rewriting our SOGs right now, just updating them. And so the other day, I was digging through my Google Drive looking for edit I had done on some fire attack stuff, and I found green shift expectations from BC Moore from when I promoted. And I pulled it up. It was a document, and I looked at it, and it blew me away with how much it had shaped my shift and my role as the BC moving forward. Because
Yeah.
I had taken the time to outline those, and that was one of my first meetings I had with my shift, was that sheet of paper, and I was like, holy crap! it's one of those things that happened. Then I forgot about it. But I find it a couple years later and go, wow, this really shaped the language we use, the direction we are going, the camaraderie that we share. It was subconscious. It was intentional at the time, but then it just became part of the lexicon moving forward. It was pretty cool. Epiphany. So for what it's worth.
No, absolutely. And it's funny you bring that up. I just got off shift this morning, and literally yesterday, I've got 5 people at my station, which means one of them is almost always traveling, or one of us is off or something. It's been a long time since we've had all 5 people there together, and I've been sitting on a conversation that I wanted to have with them for a long time, and finally we had everybody there. So I was excited for this, but really what it was is it was a moment in time of my growth as a leader, and just quick backstory on what I'm talking about is I've been an officer, a captain for 3 years, basically now 3.5. When I came into that role, I had, like you said, I had a list of expectations and kind of a mission, basically, if you want to call it, that I had already come up with, because it's, something that was been on my mind for a while. So it was nice to have that. It was already in place. We just went down the line, and that's how we operated. And I moved into the station that I'm at right now about 3 years ago, and it was an environment that needed a lot of change. It needed a culture, basically reboot. And so it was probably vital for me to have that. I had to come in with my vision, and it had to be that, and I had to be the one pushing it. And so that's kind of just out of necessity. That's how we rolled. Well, now, we're talking several years later, we've made some great improvements. We're starting to see the benefits of years of pushing, and culture finally starting to kind of shift, and good things happening. And just over the past couple months, I find myself really struggling to continue this, man. What I am doing is I'm putting this vision that I have out there that I truly believe in. I know it's great, but it's mine. It's only mine. And so if that's the case, I have to be the one pushing it. I have to be the one to continually be consistent in making it happen. And it's setting myself up for failure, because I can't do it. It has eaten me alive, because I cannot do it by myself. And so I finally realized that it's time to now shift what we do. And so what we did yesterday is we sat down, and I had the 4 questions. What are we doing good? What do we need to improve on? What are we not doing that we need to start? And what are we doing that we need to stop? And we had a great conversation of just, all of that. What are we doing good? What do we need to do better? All this stuff. And what I was really doing, and I told them this, I want you to now be a part of this vision. This is not my vision anymore. This is our vision. And this is the culture that we are creating, that you are now a part of. You now have buy-in. So I want you to believe in this, and feel as passionate about it as I have this whole time, and to fight for it, and to take accountability for that. And so that's what we sat down to do. And hopefully it's a step in a really great direction that I haven't been before, and kind of a growth period for me as a leader. But that's just kind of exactly where I was going with that. Kind of what y'all are talking about is keeping my people engaged, and learning how to continually dig in deeper into, being better about getting the best out of them.
Beautiful, man. No, and it's a great realization, because if we're not creating the next set of leaders, then what are we setting up the future for? So
Yeah.
I printed this off because I wanted to show you here. I'm a huge Von Oppen fan. So
Yeah.
you see, Chief
Oh,
Warren
yeah.
Green, the big 4 attitude is everything. Then there's the calls, training, and then our schedule, and it gets into, but it was cool to find that. So I printed it off so you could see it. But anyway.
So what is that? Is that basically his daily schedule? What exactly is it?
Oh no, this is the one I typed up. I just
okay.
Nothing I do is original. So
I got you.
Von Oppen is right at the
So
top.
that's your
And then
current.
the rest of it is my
I
the
got you.
expectations for the shift.
No,
So,
and that's, man, that's, I can't tell you how important it is. And I try to share that as much as I can with others, informal leaders even, because that's when I started. I didn't start my expectations the day I became a formal leader. It was a work in progress already, because it was just running through my mind. So having that kind of in the works already was really nice to kind of start that role right away.
Well, and there's, sorry, there's so many little things that you can do, like those expectations and getting them involved in a conversation to establish your culture, right? And take it's the little things I think we miss as leaders that can really have the biggest impacts, right? And I'm always trying to come up with different things, and I listen to a lot of people, and I don't read as much as I wish I did, but I really do struggle to read. But listening to a lot and watching and asking questions, I'm always coming up with little things on try to empower, or try to motivate, or try to lead and inspire, right? So, like for us, we have a big department, and I say big, but compared to most departments, we're pretty big. We have 44 people on a shift, right? So I have 6 stations, or I'm sorry, so yeah, 6 stations. I have 2 captains. I have 6 lieutenants. I have 18 or no, 7 drivers. I mean, and the list goes down, right?
right.
So what I do each month is, and I have it set up on a reminder on my phone, is I pick 2 firefighters, a driver, and an officer, and I just do B shift monthly highlights, and I send it to the entire B shift. Like, here's Lieutenant
Nice.
so-and-so, here's driver operator so-and-so, here's a little bit about their life. Here's where they came from. Here's the experience they bring. Here's their wife and their kids' names. Thank you for being a leader. Please take the time to mentor them. If you have less time than them, please look up to them and ask them to be your mentor, so on and so forth, right? And it gets them, excuse me, it gets them to get into that buy-in, but also take the time too, like Corley was saying, and build relationships. You should still have those conversations with them. It doesn't matter. I don't care if you're the fire chief, in my opinion. Like, you should be able to sit somebody down and say, hey, here's my career. Tell me about yours. Here's my life. Tell me about yours. And get to know them on that level. So that way, when you have those conversations with them, they feel comfortable enough to open up and actually give good, solid ideas. Establish an oath for your shift. I have a B shift oath, and then I have a B shift officer oath, right? And it's pretty simple. I mean, it's all about, finding reasons to go in and not excuses to stay out. It's about putting the citizens first. It's about remembering that no matter how high of rank of an officer you are always a fireman, and you will be the best fireman that you can be. And give them something to grab onto, give them something to latch onto and say, I'm a proud member of the B shift. I'm a proud member of the A shift, the C shift, or, Corley, y'all are red, blue, green, right? So, I'm a proud member of the green shift, right? Give them that moment. I mean, like those 10s you did, that just bought you brownie points for like 18 months. Right. Because I mean, but they're going to be able to go home and put it on their wall and say, like, my chief did that. And he did it because he loves me and he wants me to be proud. And I'm a more fireman. And it doesn't matter if we're surrounded by big fire departments. Like, I'm proud to be here. And that's what it takes. Little tiny things like that, man, have the biggest impact. And I think we miss a lot of those as leaders, because we're always trying to find the big thing to have the big impact.
Yeah.
Not realizing that sometimes that big thing, that the impact is minuscule compared to just a handshake and a hug.
Small wins. Yeah.
That's right.
Hey, the shields, it was selfish because I have an addiction to
Yeah.
those Taylor's tins. But no, man, I am so proud of my shift, and I wanted them to know, and that's the reason it was important for me. I put the year, I have it sitting next to my computer right now. And but it's funny because on the this was not intentional, but it was, but the start call smooth, finish call strong.
There you
and
go.
that's on both sides of the, and it's just but I wanted them to in the year 2047, they're retired and this is sitting on the shelf. I want them to look back and remember how awesome it was.
Heck
on
yeah.
Green Shift 2021. I mean, that's what I told them when I gave them to them. So anyway,
no, and that pride, man, that's another key ingredient in all this of, keeping people engaged and great firefighters is give them something to be proud of. And that's another kind of piece of my mission personally is just build something that has personality. I don't want to go to a firehouse, a fire station, whatever, that has no personality, that the people have no crew personality. Yeah, they got their own personal personalities, but your crew has no personality. Your station has no personality. It's not a fun place to be for me. That was one of my first missions when I came there, is to have something to be proud of, to create something that is us, and this is who we are. And man, it gives you something to fight for. And
Absolutely.
I love it.
Yep. Yep.
And I'm going to sound like a broken record because I'm always lead off with intentionality. But if the informal leader or the company officer does not intentionally build that in today's society, today's world, the fire service is a microcosm of society, but in today, there's so many distractions. They're so easy to drift apart and not be a unit, a family unit at the station. You can go hide in your corner, get on your phone, and completely, hey, wait till the tones drop, and or wait till training or insert whatever. But if it's not done intentionally, then you get what you get. And I think that it's so important to set the expectation of, we're going to do this. Hey, we're going to do this together. And tonight after dinner, we're going to throw dominoes or insert whatever, man. It's so important.
Well, and I think too, Corley, with that, it goes all the way back to the massive fire stations that we're building. Is you have to have that intentionality. You have to tell them we're going to do this together, because it'll take you 30 minutes to find them.
No, you're getting into one of my pet peeves now. Sorry.
Yeah, dude, I cannot. I mean, like, as grateful as I am.
Again, it's that dichotomy. It's like, I don't want to complain about this beautiful $1 million facility, but we don't build firehouses anymore. We don't fire office buildings.
Right. And that's the thing, is like, as grateful and amazed as I am at the support we have from the city and the size of the buildings we build, it's like, I would be okay with 800 square foot living space and 3 bays. Like, I would be okay with that, because at that point I can be sitting in my office and I can hear the conversation. And if I can hear a conversation that needs some guidance, I can walk in and I can guide the conversation. If I hear that they're trying to train on something and they're struggling on where to find the information or how to complete the skill, I can walk in and I can do that. Right now, honestly, when I'm in my office, I don't hear anything. I couldn't tell you if there's people in the fire station or not. And that's where I think we need to get back to as a fire service, just getting back to building some firehouses.
Firehouses, man. Fire homes. So yes. Dude, you get me on my pet peeve. The day room separated from the kitchen and everything else.
Oh man. Yeah. That's, everybody watches TV in the kitchen now because they don't want to go sit in the day room that's 30 feet away.
Right. Mm-hmm. Or if the guy's the cook, the station cook, he has to be in the kitchen by himself, unless someone intentionally walks in there to keep him company or help chop vegetables, etc.
Yeah, and that's ridiculous.
You should absolutely
be rubbing elbows and cooking at the same time.
And that's man, it's so interesting. You just have these conversations, and it's like, you guys literally don't know really anything going on in my department, but everything you bring up is literally everything going on in my department. I mean, I'm sitting in a station right now that over the past year they have talked about and done studies and all kinds of stuff about if they're going to remodel it or if they're going to completely tear it down and start over. And they finally starting to make decisions on that. But that's literally a conversation I had with the fire chief last week, is the blueprints that they're presenting to us. It's problematic to the utmost with me because of the living situations that it's providing us. It's everything is separated out like 1970s homes. Nothing is open. The living spaces are 80 feet away from the officer space and everything else. It's just it's as far away from conducive to teamwork and camaraderie as I could possibly think it could be. And I hate that. I just hate it. And maybe that's selfish, I don't know, but I feel like it's a pretty justified thing to just want something like Jacob said. I don't care. I mean, right now we are in a tiny little station, and that we love it. It's the oldest station we have. It's tiny, and we're not in any hurry to go anywhere because we know what's coming if when that day is coming. But the kitchen, the day room is all open where you can hang out anywhere in there and talk and be together. I'm lucky enough to be with 4 other people that enjoy being with the other 4 people. I don't want to be a part of a crew that is hard to find. I just don't want it. I would not like that. And so thankfully we all get along really well. We're completely different people. I mean, drastically different, but we get along, we have fun. and we are together almost the entire day. And I wouldn't have it any other way. And so that is, again, a great way to keep people engaged, a great way to keep people from drifting away and kind of losing themselves, because everybody's there, everybody's getting along. It's hard to do when everybody's having a good time and together.
Yep.
And I'll say this, I don't want to walk on you, Jacob. That
No, you're good.
I was trying to look at my bookshelf to see if I had the book in here, but there's a book I'm currently reading. I'm down a rabbit hole right now on leading change, implementing change, culture code, culture change, and I'm reading all these books. I don't know which book I was reading in, but it was all they did was study all these corporations and businesses and real life. I say real life because it's not fire service. The jobs, but the number one indicator of a high performance organization, like one that excelled above all, was strictly the proximity of the workers in the workplace, how close they were to each other. And they literally discovered it with a tape measure, and they could equate it to 2 feet more separation or a 6-inch higher cubicle wall. And that distance is the proximity was the number one indicator of a high performance culture.
Yep.
And I was like, yeah.
Just north of y'all, if you go in that and start asking questions in Johnson County, Kansas, they're like number one in the nation for running high performance,
Really,
including the fire department of Olathe. And we're trying it in Pearland. We're like year 3 into our HPO process, and we have HPO teams and we have all this stuff. But yeah, it's huge. And if you watch the YouTube video over high performing organizations with the New York Sanitation Department and Johnsonville Sausage, it comes down to proximity. It comes down to taking all your complainers and putting them in a room and having them solving their own problems, and then taking those ideas, giving them accountability, empowering them, putting those ideas into place. And it's about a 7-year process, they say, but then it turns into something that you read about in a book.
right.
And hey, firehouses and watch offices, we need to bring them back.
Love it. And the morning roll call.
Yes, morning roll call is I've like that was key for me as a company officer, and I see it less and less and less. And it's like when I do see it, man, it's like a breath of fresh air when I sit down at the table and the officer like lines out the crew for the day. I'm like, oh man, I had a lieutenant at 2s. He just promoted to BC, so now he relieves me, Garrett Albright. But it's like he would sit down, he'd make his plate, sit down, grab the remote, put the TV on mute, and say, all right, fellas, listen up. And everybody would sit down, they stop eating, he'd line them out, boop, 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 boop. And then they go off and have a good conversation, watch a hunting show, eat breakfast, and then go on and do their stuff. And it was just,
Nice.
it's just, okay, I don't have to worry about this house today. Let me go make rounds everywhere else,
Yeah.
It's powerful.
Yeah.
And that, the relations, Corley brought it up first, and we've just kind of bounced around with it the whole time, man. My battalion chief right now, I don't know that I've ever known anybody that is better in that area. He truly, when you are talking to him, I don't care who you are, if you're one of his captains or one of his newest firefighters, or even somebody on a different shift, if you're talking to him, you feel like you are the very most important person in the world, because he is pouring his attention into you, and he truly cares. And I'm not saying this is anything he's putting on. He truly cares about everybody, and that's awesome to see, and to really kind of hopefully gain some of that from him. Learn how important it is to get to know each person and their families and everything. And man, anytime you see him, he's asking questions about what's happening at home, how's the family, this and that. And that right there is one of the most important things I feel like we all need, is just to feel cared for. If you don't feel cared for at work, then it's not going to be very enjoyable being there. I think that's one of the, just a human nature need. You want to feel cared for. And so, as leaders of any rank, and helping your people that you're around feel cared for and listened to, that's huge.
The physiology, like I'm a huge fan of Simon Sinek, if you know me at all, and all of his books are great, but Leaders Eat Last, probably the most misquoted book title of all time, is as there's people standing around holding their plates and stuff, because it's so much more than just getting the last serving or whatever, or letting everybody. He gets down into the actual hormones and physiological effects of when you feel safe and secure and cared for at work. how big of a difference it makes on an evolutionary scale of how we've developed, whether you believe in evolution or not, as far as just how we've developed as human beings. And it's just, yeah, what you just described is a key, I think the key to high performance organization. So absolutely.
One thing that I don't want to skip over that I feel is very, very important in the same topic, and really maybe it's personal, because it's the reason that I've probably faced most of my downs is, most of us, or anybody, if you're in those times, or probably even talking more of people that are in roles of leadership that have people in those times, if you're seeing people that are having those down times, a big mistake we can easily make is just jumping on them and focusing on that behavior or that mistake or whatever, without truly digging into maybe something a little deeper. And really kind of what I'm getting at is, okay, somebody's causing trouble, somebody's checked out, somebody's did something complacent. Okay, why? Not just jumping on what happened, but maybe there's something going on. And why I bring that up is, like I said, I have dealt with a lot of family stuff, a lot of personal stuff through the years that has absolutely knocked me down, absolutely beat me down, sucked everything out of me, to where when I came to work, I didn't have anything else to give. I just didn't. And some of those times I was with crews, like I talked about earlier, that really didn't add anything to me there. And so I was just allowed to whatever you want to call it, stay in that slump and stay in those low times. And so for me now, knowing that and kind of seeing it from the other side now too, I definitely want to impress on others that we've got to ask why, why something is going on, because it might be something that they need help with, something that we need to address, that addressing that can fix everything. So what, you guys have any thoughts or experiences kind of with that?
I mean, yeah, I agree with you. I think asking why is very important. But there's a time and place for it too, because I do think that you can ask why so much that it becomes a hindrance to the teaching that you're actually trying to do, or to the message that you're trying to instill amongst the crew. If you're asking why because you're in training and you're going over skills, it's very important. Make sure you ask the why. Make sure you teach the why before it has to be asked, But if you're asking why, as far as doing cycle count on EMS supplies, or sweeping the station, or just little menial tasks like that, that's really not needed, in my opinion. I think usually it's pretty much expected since fire school, right? I mean, because you have to clean up at fire school, that these are certain things that you're going to do every day. You don't have to worry about asking the why. Don't waste your whys on that. Let's ask them where they're needed. But I will agree that you cannot be successful, and this is my personal opinion, but you cannot be successful as a crew if your crew and you do not understand the why. And you have to understand it, you have to believe in it, you have to teach it. And it's very important that as the officer that you have that why answer before you teach what you're trying to teach, or before you instill what you're trying to instill, because sometimes you don't know, and that's okay. I mean, I've there's a lot of stuff that I've said, man, I'm going to do this on the B shift, right? And I'll say it to my dad, or I'll say it to my wife, or maybe just one of the older guys that I speak to still these days, and they'll ask me why, and I won't have an answer. And I was like, I don't know. I need to go figure out why, and then you start conversations and you talk, and then you're able to understand more. And then when you say, hey, this is how we're going to operate, and they ask that why, you have that answer, because that can be very damaging, in my opinion, to a leader, is to say we're doing this, but not be able to explain it.
Absolutely.
And
oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No,
You got it.
no, because you outlined beautifully the mission why, the culture why. And I'll go a different direction, which is what I was hearing earlier, is when you have a guy who is checked out, who is not fired up, is having obviously, well, I say obviously, or you just, the guy you could pile onto and say, why is this guy being a turd? You got to understand his why of why is he in that position he's in, like where Jeremy was having his problems at home, or family issues going on, or guys that we're the fire service, so guys dealing with divorce or relationships that are ending, and burnout and trauma and PTSD and lack of sleep and all these things. And it is very, very important to understand the why. And I'm trying to figure out the way to say it. The investment as a leader, you can either spend the time investing in your guys up front and understanding who they are and what they're going through. And it takes a lot of effort and a lot of time. That's the reason why a lot of people don't do it. It's hard to do, but you can either spend the time up front, or you can be guaranteed that when a problem does come, you're going to spend the time on the backside, picking up the pieces or losing somebody, either to the job, to this fire service, or their life. And that's just the reality of it. You can either, as a leader, invest the time up front and be in front. It doesn't guarantee that you're still not going to have tragedy or lose people or anything like that, but you're going to spend the time either way. So you might as well do it on the side that reaps the most rewards, which is keeping guys plugged in, engaged, and wanting to show up to work.
Yeah. It's your job as an officer, when you talk about building relationships, you should know them like you know your family. You should know that, okay, I'm looking at Jacob, he walked through the door, and you're looking at him, you're like, okay, something's wrong with him today. Something's off, right? And you leave him alone for a bit, and then you go a little bit later, say, hey man, you good? And when they say yes, say okay, and tell them why you're asking, right? Like, say, okay, because when you walked in this morning, something was off. I noticed it. And when you call them out like that, 90% of the time, I guarantee they'll be like, well, I just, little things like this, or I'm going through something big. Understand what time they get to work, memorize it. And when they're not there within 5 minutes, call them, right? I mean, show them that they care, right? I mean, I know every day we start shift at 6. I know by 5:33 that everybody at station 2 is going to be at work. Like, I just know that. And I know that the driver Shamblin, I get there at 5, he's going to be there about 4:50. So if he's not there when I pull up, I'm calling him, because we only live 3 miles apart. We both have the same drive. I know the officer is going to be there at 5:05. I know that one of the firefighters is going to be there at 5:03, and that coffee's going to be, being brewed. So if I'm not seeing these things when I'm pulling in the station, I'm making phone calls. Company officers should be making phone calls. Driver operators, senior men, senior women, you should know what your rookies and what your officers are doing, and be able to make those phone calls and watch their body language and say something's not right today. And it's all part of peer support. It's all part of loving each other. It's all part of the brotherhood that we all preach. And it's really getting into that, like you were saying, getting ahead of it, starting that conversation, right? I mean, sit them down, like I say, sit them down, tell them about the bumper, tell them about the history of the fire department. Just get to know them, smoke a cigar with them, drink a Monster, whatever they like, and then write it down, write their birthday down and everything. So you can send them a text message. So you can do all these little things that just continuously show them that you're invested in them, so they continue to invest in you.
And I'm smiling so big because I just know this. I would love to work for you. Because again, you're like, you just laid out the blueprint for how to succeed as a leader, in any position, I don't care what you're doing, your home life, how to succeed. But the coolest part that you don't even realize is how much, I know you realize it, so I don't want to say it that way, but it's just built into the framework of it, is when you do make the call, that guy trusts that you're actually looking out for him. The trust is built in because of the relationship.
It's not micromanaging.
It's not a, where the hell are you? It's a, hey man. And when you have the conversation, when you go up to him and say, hey, you seemed a little off today, they trust that you were asking it because you genuinely care, not because you're, just notice that they were off.
Sure.
It's that trust exists, and that's what makes the rest of it so effective. When you make it's just
100%.
Dude, I love it. So
celebrate everything, man. I mean, just the other day on Christmas Day, we had a fire. It was terrible for those people, but we had a fire. 2 rookies, second tour on, they make a fire. Like, nice. Celebrate that.
Yes.
Take a picture. Tell them good job. Say, hey, you did it, man. Like, you had no idea what you were doing, and you're okay, and you did it because you stuck with your officer. You listened, and I mean, like, dude, those guys were to the moon, And all I did was just send them a text message. Hey, man, good job today. Proud of you. That was it. That's all it takes.
Yeah,
dude.
And the crew's going to take the rest, right?
And I'm not a proponent of, like, in the front yard in front of the person.
Oh no.
I know. We always take, like, on their first fire, man, we always take them to the back of the house or something and get a shot of them together. I've got one framed on my desk of one of my rookies from 2018ish. And It's powerful.
Back of the pumper, the front bumper, no house in it. I am a huge proponent of not doing that.
Right.
I wouldn't want my
No,
my
I know.
house on somebody's wall celebrating, right? Like, oh man, that was such a good fire, you know.
They lost everything. It was awesome.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I was getting at is, we have two choices when you have somebody that maybe needs some tweaking or needs a little redirection. We can either get tired of it and just kind of call it off and write them off, or we can figure out maybe there's something else going on that's causing these issues that we can dig into. And I think what you guys are talking about, setting those relationships in place before this stuff ever happens, that's really setting a great tone for when that time comes, that you need to ask that why, because it's not going to be an easy why. It's not just a how are you doing today, and move on when they say good. What I'm talking about is I'm noticing some things that's an issue. This needs to be addressed. Is there something else going on that might be kind of causing this? And if you ask that question, it's probably not going to be an easy conversation after that. So really putting in place those relationships and like you talked about, building the trust and cementing the fact that you do care for them, that's going to make everything else in the future a lot easier and more really just truthful and better overall.
And if you and those if you don't have the relationship, if you don't have the trust, then you can just hang it up, not give up or anything like that, but you're going to be wildly less effective when you do have the conversation.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And that's why I write letters to all of my officers' wives and families, is just for that. That starts the, hey man, this guy's a little bit different maybe, or this guy really has my back, or this guy really cares about my loved one, or whatever. And it's not an original Jacob idea, right? Like nothing, like Corley's saying, nothing I do is original, right? So I mean, I heard about another officer doing this for his firefighters, and I was like, man, that's a really cool idea. Like I've never heard of anybody doing that in Texas. It's like, I'm sure it happens, but I haven't heard about it.
Right.
So I'm going to try it. And I started it, and man, just the response from it was out of this world. So I was like, okay, I'm going to keep it going. And when we promoted our new lieutenant, David Hefner, he promoted to my shift, and he's at 2s on B shift. And I wrote his family a letter, and he was like, man, I really appreciate that. And I was like, well, yeah, because at the end of the day, like we all know what can happen on this job. And I want your family to know, like, I'm doing everything in my power to protect you and protect them, because I don't want them to have to go through that. Right. Yeah. But I want them to also know that, God forbid, if they do, like, we're here and we have your back, and I have your back, and I will help take care of your family, and this fire department will be there. And I think it just a little small thing that just goes a long ways. Right. I had a little card made. David Jones up at Addison Fire Department, he wrote me this nice letter one time after I taught a class up at the colony, and it was just a little card, and it said, from the office of the fire chief, and it had the scramble on it. And he wrote me a note on the inside. I was like, well, okay, great idea. I called him. I said, hey, where'd you get those cards? He told me, I made some for the office of the battalion chief, and it's got the PFD scramble on them. I gave some to each chief, and I said, hey, whenever you want to write a note, just write it in here. And then there you go. Just something extra, right? Just something a little bit extra to sit here and say, do this, and here's something to commemorate, your time as battalion chief.
And you share it here. And so now someone else will hear it and say, that's a great idea. Because you shared your letter writing. And I don't know, I called you probably 6 months ago, I think it was. Yep. I said, hey, run me through that again. And now I'm like, I think I'm 5 letters in. So I write about one a month or so to one of the wives. And that's just, and I got a checklist so that eventually over the next couple of years, I'm going to have written a letter and it's a handwritten, very personal letter to the wife, saying, hey, I really appreciate your husband or the spouse, but I really appreciate all 22 are men on my shift. So I sometimes fall in that trap of saying guys all the time. And it's so far it's a gang, but what I'm saying is you shared, not only did you do it, but you shared it, and now you're impacting me who's now, and who knows where the end of it will be.
Yeah. I mean, one day you might be fire chief or more, and then you turn back and now your rookie is sitting there writing letters to their
10 days a month, baby. 10 days a month. It's the greatest job on earth. And one of the reasons why is 10 days a month.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, and that, that leads into another area that probably, one of the kind of the last pieces of all this. And, we've talked about a lot from kind of a leadership perspective, looking at how we help others and all that. But kind of, I've mentioned to the guys before we started recording, another perspective on this is when you're finding yourself in those areas. And for me, right now, man, I'm kind of struggling a little bit with this whole outside of my firehouse walls type mentality of trying to do good things. If last year was a pretty solid year, of a lot of work and put a lot into it, and this year, man, has been a struggle for me. And so for me, doing these things right here is hopefully what will help me, the networking. And I know you guys are very big on that as well, and how important it is to you guys, just being able to reach out to people from all over, the US, different states, and having people that are like-minded and that are sharing the same, not only mission basically, but the same issues, dealing with the same things that I am frustrated with, or have already kind of overcome some of the things that I'm fighting, or whatever it is. It, man, it is so critical to have that network outside of your firehouse wall, so that you can reach out. Is the bigger you build it, the more kind of, the better you're going to have, and then the more you're going to have choices to reach out to. But how do you guys what do you want to add into that?
I'll go where you guys. I'll wait my turn. I got some stuff to say, so I'm gonna make
Well,
my note here.
For me, I think those times come for everybody, and I think they come multiple times in a career. I know they have for me. Without getting into too much details, we had some big changes in our fire department this summer, and it led to me working a lot of hours, averaging almost 200 hours a paycheck, and a lot of time spent off duty at the fire station and doing certain things for the fire chief and and the assistant chiefs. And long story short, right, it wore me down to the point of, one was telling me he hates the fire department because it's taking me away from him. It was a lot of driving. It's 44 miles one way for me to work. So it was like I'd drive to work, I'd work for 3 hours, I'd take 3 hours off, come back to Katy, coach Luke's football game, then go back to work, finish out my 48 and then come back. Right. And then, or I'd get off shift and then hang over till 1, 2 o'clock in different meetings, and then drive in and then be up, back there by 7 o'clock the next morning, all kinds of different things. And it wore me down to a point to where the guys noticed at work, like, hey, you look different, you look exhausted, how you doing, this and that. And it, like I was saying, it took, when Luke's football team lost their playoff game, he was upset naturally, right? Didn't want to give me a hug at the end of the game. I get it, you're upset. He goes, where are you going? So I got to go back to work. And he was like, man, I hate the fire department. And I was like, what? And all this kid's ever talked about is turning 14 so he can come do a ride along. And he said, yeah, he said, I hate the fire department. He said, you're always there. I mean, like, you're here, but you're there. And, then it started hitting me like, man, we didn't get to hunt in September. We didn't hunt in October. Now here it is, second weekend of November. We haven't hunted yet. And he really likes to hunt. And I was like, okay. And so I had a long talk with somebody I trust. And they told me, they said, hey, you need to probably take some time off. You need to completely disconnect. And I'd never done that in my career. Like, honestly, I'd never truly, even when I'm off, I'd always have my work phone, or I'd have a laptop and I'd log in, check email, whatever. And I started kind of playing around with the idea. And one of the new battalion chiefs came in with an idea that he wanted to do. And I, like I said, the guy came off my shift, highly respect the guy. Him and I see a lot of things the same way. And I snapped at him, like, he gave me an idea. And I was like, well, if you want to do that, you can do it, because I'm not doing it. And I just like snapped at him. And I caught myself and I was like, man, I'm sorry. Right. And I called him on the way home. I was like, I apologize. Like, I shouldn't have done that. I'm just, and he told me, he goes, you're tired. And I can tell you're tired. And so, gracious enough, my fire chief supported me. He gave me 16 days off. So I was off from December 8th till Christmas Eve. And then I worked Christmas Eve and Christmas Day and all that, of course. But So he gave me that 16 days off, and to completely disconnect and completely get away from the fire department, as bad as it sounds, that was the best thing I could have done in 2021. Because you do have those times, and it is hard, and you do have those moments of, do I love this job anymore? Or am I doing the right thing? Or do I need to keep doing what I'm doing? Right. Because look, I mean, no matter what you do, you're always going to have your haters out there.
Yep.
No matter what you do, you're going to have your cheerleaders out there. But the biggest thing is you don't want to become a self-hater. You always want to be your own cheerleader. Like, you can be critical of yourself. You can criticize yourself. You can always push yourself to be better, but you never want to say like, I just need to give up, or I just need to stop doing what I'm doing. You don't want to become that. And when you get to that level, I always thought like, you just push through, it. And I'm here to tell you, like, taking that time, if you have that time, taking that time, or when you're on your 4 days off or on your 2 days off, if you work a 40 or a 24-48, be disconnected. That is the best thing that you can do. And I know it's hard. Like, we're firemen, we can't. You can go home and read an article. You can go home and watch a podcast. You can go home and watch YouTube. You're still disconnected from what affects you within your fire department. And that is what I'm starting to find here today. And this last tour is, that's how you're going to become a better leader. That's how you're going to become a better employee. That's how you're going to become a better brother or sister, is if you can completely disconnect, come back re-engaged, and put everything you have for that shift into your love of the job. Right. Because that is what everybody's expecting. And that's what they do in our fire departments and our admin, right? Every day at 5 o'clock, the lights go off, the phone goes in the desk drawer, and they go home and they disconnect so they can come back and provide for us what we need on that level. And we just never seem to be able to do that in operations. And learning that over these last 16 days, like, I know that it's going to be a while before I can do that completely for these 4 days, but once everybody's rolling and we're all in the same train, man, like, to be able to fully disconnect and then come back and re-engage is going to be priceless.
And that's beautiful, because you segue right into what I wanted to do, a quick talk, and I won't bore you guys too much with details, but I love this analogy because it's such a great self-analysis tool, or it's a tool you can put on someone else, to some degree. But we all understand the fire triangle because we're firemen, and we know if we knock a leg out, that the fire goes out, right? So I make this analogy to what a red hot fireman, someone that's burning with the job, blazing. That's a good thing. You know what I'm saying? They're ate up with the job, but you have to have all three legs for it to happen. And so when someone isn't plugged in or burning, like on fire for the job, why is that? What leg is missing? So you have to understand the three legs. And so for me, the heat side of the triangle is the calling. It's the connection to the calling, what I call it. This job is greater than us. It's the greatest job on earth. You're connected to it. And we all know the guys who are connected to that, the guys that go to the conferences, the guys that are constantly trying to push, and they have a high connection to the calling. Rookies generally come out of an academy with a very high heat because they just came out of this whole thing with the pride and the ownership, usually depending on the department, and they have a very high heat. Now then, the second part of it is the fuel. What do we burn up? What is actually getting consumed? And that is our willpower, our drive, and Jacob just laid it out there. He's a high heat guy. I mean, he's connected and passionate about this job, and he was burning himself up with that passion and just consuming basically his will, his drive. And he hit a point where it was gone. And the last thing, of course, you have to have for a fire is oxygen. And what is that? For me, that is the culture you were in. That's the atmosphere. That's the other people that you surround yourself with. Because when you take a rookie that is burning with heat, and he's got a high, lot of will because he hasn't been burned up yet, and you stick him at a station with a bunch of turds, you were creating a vent limited condition, and he is going to be smoldering before long, and he will be ash, just gray ash. And so it's a great tool to look at and say, why am I not fired up? What's going on? And you can analyze it and say, holy crap, I forgot my heat. I forgot why I'm doing this. Or I've used up all I've got to give. I got to recharge it somehow. And that's where family, friends, keeping first things first, hunting with your kid. Anyway, didn't want to belabor the point with it, but I love that analogy. So I love to tell people about it, because you can put it on yourself and say, why am I not on fire right now? Hey, what's going on?
And you hit it. And I want to put an exclamation point on that, because you cannot, and chiefs, officers, fire chiefs, please listen, because this, and it's just an opinion of Jacob, but You cannot fix a toxic crew with one person. They will turn that one person toxic. You cannot fix a problem leader by putting them with a good crew. You have to fix the leader. You cannot fix a toxic crew with a good leader, because the crew will beat down the leader. It takes a family. It takes a multi-person unit to fix those issues. So I've I've been on the bad side of that. I've been told, you're going to this shift because I need you to fix this captain. Well, he's a captain, I'm a pipeman. I'm not gonna fix him. And not that I became toxic, but I just became mediocre. I just became minimum. So I stayed off the radar. Right. So if you're out there, do not think that you're going to fix a culture problem with one person, or an attitude problem with one person. You as the leader have to fix that. And you have to put expectations, hold them accountable, and fix it yourself before you continue to breed that attitude or that culture you don't want.
Oh yeah.
Strong.
That's awesome.
And I'll say this on the fire triangle, and is the oxygen. That's why it's so important, what Jeremy led off with, getting outside of your own department and plugging in with other people who are on fire. There's people out there that are oxidizers, and they have fuel and they give off the oxygen, man. And they are the ones that burn bright and light other people on fire. The cool part is when you go to conferences and you meet these guys, you meet the Jeremy Sanders, you meet the Jacob Johnsons, and the quality of men and women that are at the top of their game in the American Fire Service is unreal. As far as just the quality of their character, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's
Just good people.
impressive, man.
Yeah.
And when you can pick up a phone and call, someone and say, hey, and, insert whether it's Kurt Isaacson, Dave McGrill, or, these people that you meet, and Jacob Johnson, and insert whoever. I don't even want to try and name names. Just some of the best people in the world that will, that's the oxygen you can count on.
Yeah.
So
that's exactly what I was, when I brought that up, that's exactly kind of my mindset of that direction is, it's good to have the relationships at home, at the firehouse, and that's great, like we've talked about over and over again. But I don't know that anybody's ever really going to get everything they need just from that firehouse, or even just in that department, because you're just kind of recirculating the same mojo or energy. You're not getting anything outside. But once you get out and you meet these people that are, man, they're passionate, and they're freaking lighting people up left and right, that's when you really just start to see, gosh, I mean, there is so much out there that you just don't know about unless somebody tells you, like hopefully we're doing right now for somebody to really reach out and get to know these people. And it's not just the big names, that's not what we're talking about. It's the people that travel all over the place to
Yes.
any conference they could go to as students. Those are there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people like that you'll never see names on podcasts or social media or anything, but they're out there firing people up from the ground level. And that's, man, you can't talk enough about all that right there, really being helpful to keep you going, pushing you forward.
I mean, how many people know the Kano brothers?
Yeah, I love those two guys.
I mean, you know what I mean? And
Yes.
so, yeah, it's exactly what you're saying, is they're going around as students and they are fired up.
Yeah.
Man.
No, absolutely.
I mean, Robert Vasquez, right? Or Eddie Steele up in the Fort Worth area, Dallas, Fort Worth area. I mean, you start naming guys like that, you're exactly right. You have to get out there and do that. And our fire departments, for the most part, were built on outsiders. So why wouldn't we want to go and start getting to know outsiders and investing in outsiders and opening our view, right? Our window of view and opportunity in order to just stay in love with the job.
Yeah.
And then I speak in analogies all the time, but another one I love to make is firemen can identify with them is the 4-gas analogy. We keep 4 gases around so we don't end up in a toxic atmosphere, right? But for it to work, it has to be calibrated. And getting outside of your own department is calibrating your detector, your 4-gas.
Yeah.
So you don't think that toxic is normal. You don't think where you're at is normal. It kind of calibrates it and say, wait a second, this is, this is everywhere. So it is normal. So I'm not crazy, or this is not normal. We can change this. This doesn't have to be this way. But you don't know that if you just live in your, if your 4-gas is not beeping, you don't know you're sitting there breathing it in.
or
So,
it's
Jeremy,
not.
Jeremy, make
it's
sure
not,
you soundbite that. Let's take a script from Corley.
yeah,
Soundbite.
that's right. But yeah, but that's another great analogy. I love it. You go, even if it may be normal as far as it's a lot of different places, that doesn't mean that it's okay. And so
right,
reaching out and finding out that, man, I'm not the only one facing
right,
this. It feels good that now I know that I'm not the only one. It feels good that I see other people dealing with it, winning, whatever you want to call it.
right.
It's very helpful to know that. So yeah. Well, I
Beautiful.
think, man, to kind of start wrapping up all this, I just been, writing notes as you guys have been talking. And it's funny how it's kind of laid out. I feel like we have totally conquered this whole conversation or this whole topic. We've really we've solved the issue of keeping people from getting into slumps and all that. And how we did it is the 3 E's. And here you go. It's
I
the
like it.
engagement, empowerment, and empathy. I think that sums up pretty much everything we talked about: keeping our people engaged, keeping ourselves engaged, empowering people to become the leaders that they can. Maybe they don't even know they can be, but they can be. And empathy, the building relationships, the putting yourself in other people's shoes, and really getting to the bottom of what may be happening to cause different things. So I don't know. It's just funny. I was just writing it as we go,
No,
and
it's
it
beautiful,
just
man.
kind of
It's
laid
Yeah, I
out
beautiful.
like
like
it.
that.
I love
I
it.
like it.
Anything else that you guys want to add on the topic, or whatever else before we kind of wrap up and let you guys
Well,
talk
behind the
about where we
scenes
can find
stuff,
you?
just
Yeah.
behind the scenes stuff is, whenever you said Jacob and Corley, I want you guys to be on the podcast, I called him up and said, hey, what are you going to wear?
Yeah, yeah. For those of you listening to the podcast, they're both wearing the exact same. What is it? The Rescue
Rescue
Consultants.
consultants.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
NRC.
I didn't get the memo. Apparently, they didn't let me involve. So I'm just wearing a Revolution on the Fire Tactics on the Lake shirt.
Which
So
I almost wore. I was looking at One Warrior or
yeah.
or NRC. I almost put on the One Warrior
I'm
shirt.
I'm
So
sure if we walked to each other's closets, we would feel like we were looking at our
yeah,
closets. We
yeah.
probably got the same clothes.
Yeah, yeah. Except mine are big and tall, right? So,
That's
Morgan,
all right.
but I went ahead and pushed this back to December 28th just so I could have these curtains in the background and give Chief
I love
Thompson
it,
a run
man.
for his money.
like
Yeah.
it. I
So,
like it.
yeah. Most famous
beautiful.
curtains in America is Chief Thompson's office.
It's awesome. That guy is a genius, and my probably my biggest mentor that does not personally, someone that's personally in my life day in, day out.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Long distance mentor. He's probably the biggest influence.
Oh,
He
big
actually earlier you were talking, Corley, and I was going to say something, and it just kind of we moved on, but you were talking about being deliberate. And one of my favorite quotes of his is, you can have a culture that you fight for and that is desirable to you, or you can just let it happen. But it's going to happen. The culture
Yeah.
is going to exist, and it's either going to exist in a way that you want it to, or it's just going to exist however it flows, and that's probably not going to be what you want. And so
Mhm.
you might as well fight for it. So that's one of his, definitely paraphrasing it, but that's one of my favorite things that he says.
Dude,
for
that's
sure.
one of the
Yep.
big influences. It's one of part of my 9 L's of leadership. It's labor is one of them, and in there it's all based on what he said, which is how to build that culture intentionally. Anyway, I go on another analogy, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's man, when I went up there to the colony this summer and presented, it was like, man, I spent the whole day with him, and he drove me around to all the fire stations. We visited, we drank coffee, he brought me to lunch, showed me everything about the colony. And I was like, man, I don't even need to present. Like, this was my Super Bowl right here, man.
Yeah.
Just
No doubt.
being able to bounce ideas off of them and just talk to them. And it's like, I mean, I know like everybody tells you be your own person, be your own chief, but man, like I'd love to be a Chief Thompson one day. Like
Yeah.
that's I want to stay on shift, but I'd love to have the influence on the fire service that he has one
Yeah.
day. Cause man, that dude he's a force to be reckoned with.
There's
Yeah.
no doubt, man. That training document he just put. Anyway.
Oh my God.
Here you go. Here's a 30-page document on how to build a badass training program at your department. Here you go. Come
Yep.
get it if you want it.
Yep.
It's like, okay. So
But,
anyway,
it's something else with that, while we're on that topic, that, yeah, he's a 1 in a million guy, obviously, but he's doing it. He's
Mhm.
he's making it happen, which means that others can make it happen. We can't just look at that department and think, oh, there's no way that we could ever, have that here. Who who says you can? It
Mhm.
just takes one person pushing, and hopefully that one person turns into 2 or 3 or 40 or whatever. But it's got to start with that one. And if you're listening and you want that to happen, then you can't just wish it, or you can't just tell somebody else to start it. You might as well be the one to do it. So that's a great way to kind of tie it all with a bow right there.
Beautiful.
What
Yep.
you guys got anything else to say? Finish up. Good
I
to
think
go.
you summed it
Sir,
up
I'm
nicely,
good.
brother.
Well,
You did.
Jacob, we'll
You
start
killed
with
it.
you. You kind of mentioned something earlier. I don't know if you want to say it yet, but you got some big things coming. But if you don't, then what else? Where can we find you? If anybody wants to get a hold of you, whatever you want to say.
Oh man, I'm good. I'll be I got a busy spring. I'll be teaching or presenting, I guess is the best way to put it, at Teaks Leadership Symposium in January. And then
Nice.
I'll be at North Florida Fire Expo in March. I'll be at a Texas conference in Live Oak, Texas, up by San Antonio in April.
Nice.
And then my man Eric Thiel, I got to get with him. He's trying to get me, Clyde, and Mo to come up to Wisconsin like May, June sometime. So trying to find some ways to get in there and get family vacation, spring football, and 15-year wedding anniversary going. So
Yeah.
got a busy spring coming up, but looking forward to it, man. I mean, as always, you can find me on social media on Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook, Facebook and LinkedIn especially. And you can always email me at jacobjohnson012@gmail.com, or you can give me a phone call at 713-560-3729.
Beautiful.
Perfect.
Dude, I don't know how you do it with yeah, man, because I'm in this beautiful spot where my kids are all adults, and
Yeah.
I don't have grandkids yet, so it's like this window
Yeah.
where I can just drop, except for my dogs, I can just drop and go. And so
Yeah, you
I
can
can't,
go.
yeah, I can't
I'm a little
imagine.
jealous as many times you've been to Florida this year.
Hey, I'm going back. I'm gonna see you at North Florida Fire Expo, so I'll be there
Yeah,
with
dude,
you.
I cannot wait.
That's
There's
gonna be a
gonna be
good
so
time.
many good people there. NRC will be there,
Yeah.
and we'll be there. Chief Lasky will be there.
No, it's gonna be
Captain
good.
Galliano will be there. I mean, it's gonna be phenomenal.
No, it's gonna be fun. I've got a lot of traveling. 2022 is blown up. After trying for like 5 years and applying at FDIC, they finally accepted me to teach. So I'm
Awesome.
super proud and humble. That weird combo of,
Oh yeah.
and I love it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be at Live Oak with you, speaking
Yes,
there.
sir.
Yeah, it's gonna be good times. North Florida Fire Expo, CF, Pensacola, because obviously if my kids weren't all in Oklahoma, I would probably move to Florida, to be honest. I love that state. And so
Yeah.
that's it. Yeah. Of course, the scrap is booked into February. Just this morning, got the Mega Scrap Bravo, and that is going to be Jim McCormick, Basil, Ibrahim, and Robert. Speaking of National Rescue Consultants, Robert Ramirez, and it's going to be nothing but Mayday and Rit the entire time
Nice.
with those
Oh, man.
guys. So that
That's
one's going to
awesome.
be yeah, always. So that's going to be April 5th. It's locked in. It's hard to get 4 firefighters to
Oh
line up
yeah,
schedules, man.
absolutely.
It's like
Yeah.
next to impossible, because he put this one together right
Oh,
here with 3 of
absolutely.
us.
The last one
When
with Von Oppen and Mark Alone and
Yes,
Jared
that was
Sergi out. I was very lucky to just kind of fall into something early. I figured that would be months of trying to, because those are busy guys. So yeah.
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 Awesome.
When does Jack Scott hit the station?
He graduates February 18th, so he's got about 6 weeks to
Ooh,
go. 6 weeks
man.
of the academy left out of 16. So
Heck yeah. Is he excited?
very, oh, dude, it's so fun to see, because OKC has such a strong culture of pride and ownership at the rookie level. And to see it get beat into him, and I'm saying that in a loving, like a forging kind of way, not a abuse kind of way, to see it get beat into him and him take pride in it. He busts my chops already that I don't work at OKC, and I'm like, okay, bro. He's like, hey, do you, he goes,
Big dog in you.
oh yeah, already, man. It's already started, which I expected from him, but
Yeah.
it's good, man. So I'm very proud.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Heck yeah.
Man, again, I appreciate you guys, your time, but also your friendship and everything that you've both been there for me a lot over the past couple of years, and I just appreciate you. And I want to say that, man, super proud of what you guys got going. It's amazing to kind of see the growth as the year and a half or two or whatever, however long I've known each of you has happened. It's crazy. So appreciate it. Proud of you. Thank you very much, and look forward to many more conversations. So thank you very much.
Love it. Anytime. And I want to say this, man, because Dave McGrill has his tiers of you guys are both top shelf firemen. I'm proud to call you my friends. So thank you.
Appreciate
Thank you.
that.
Thank y'all very much. I feel the exact same way about y'all, man. I needed this today and I'm glad we can make it happen.
Me too.
Awesome.
All right. Well, everybody, thank you very much for tuning in and listening up. Hopefully we added some value to your lives or gave you something helpful to bring you up if you're needing a little bit of pick me up. So until next time, we will say stay humble and do work.